you're probably interested in creating a webinar because it's going to generate you leads. But before I go into the 5-step process of creating a webinar, there's another benefit that you're probably not thinking of. And it's this: you can actually reach 10, 20, 30, 50,000 people by creating a webinar. How? Make sure that you actually record your live webinar, because what you now have is a long form piece of content that you can chop up 10 to 15, 60-second social media clips that you can post. And when you post it in the comment section, make sure you put the link to the full webinar. So essentially the social media clips are a teaser to the full webinar. Now, before I go into step 1, make sure you watch until the very end, because I'm going to be sharing a not well-known hack to help you get more exposure to your webinar. So step number 1, create a catchy title and description for the webinar. So what this means is you have to understand and identify what are the pain points that the people that are attending your webinar have. What problems are they facing? And so if you don't know it right off the bat, you probably need to do a little research. What is an example of a catchy title? So let's say we have an accountant, right? An accountant wants to create a webinar for small business owners. A great title might be something like 5 ways to reduce your business taxes, or 9 hacks to legally reduce your taxes for business owners. So it should be a problem. It should be a pain point that the people that are attending your class are facing. And so put some thought into titles. Now, what you can do is you can actually go on YouTube or Google and type in those pain points once you identify what the pain points are. And what you're going to see are top rankings of videos or search results that are performing well. Especially on YouTube, you can see which videos are doing well, and you can create a title exactly like that or something very similar. If you create it exactly like that, then great, it's going to rank, right? If you do a great job. But make sure it's either the same or something very similar to the ones that are ranking. That will help your search ability. Okay, step number 2 is to create an outline. So what I personally do whenever I create my own webinar is I open up a Google Doc and then I put all my thoughts out into that Google Doc. And so it's almost like a brainstorming session where whatever ideas that come into my mind, I put it in that Google Doc. After that, there's 2 ways you can go about it. You can actually create it yourself, finish up the outline based off of those thoughts, and maybe the sequencing and the order of the webinar. Or if you want to be a little bit more efficient, you can go on ChatGPT and you can tell ChatGPT to create an outline for you. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that ChatGPT has all of the information within your document. And so you can copy and paste it, but you want to create a prompt. And the prompt should be something like, hey, create me an outline for a webinar I'm doing regarding title to and whoever your audience is. And then put all the ideas there. And what it'll do is it'll start to compile a flow for the webinar. And so you can play around and test different prompts, because with ChatGPT, it's all about the prompts that you use. And so make sure that you test different prompts, but also you give it as much information as possible. The more information, the more descriptive you can give ChatGPT, the better the outline is going to be. If you just input very general ideas or very general prompts, then it's going to give you a very general outline. Make sure you're as descriptive as possible. Now, step number 3 is to create a landing page. And a landing page is a place when people are registering for the webinar, they input their information. And so some of the information that you really want from them is name, email, phone number, and what questions they have regarding the topic of the webinar. And so the reason why you want all that information is because now you have their data, right? And you can nurture that lead, especially text and phone numbers. So one thing that I do for myself in my webinars is once someone registers and they input their phone number, they receive an automated text from me telling them that we have received their registration for the class. And then later on, I can nurture that lead. Now, the reason why asking what questions they have is so important is because it's great content, right? These are actual problems that your potential clients and your potential customers have. Real problems that they're asking you for the answer. so what that does is, number one, you can answer those questions during the webinar. So while they're there watching, you answer those questions. Hey, I got a question from Susan. She's asking X, Y, and Z. Let me answer that real quick. Hey, I got a question from Bill. He's asking X, Y, Z. I'm going to answer that. And so you can actually clip up each question and post it on social media. And another benefit of doing that is someone might be asking a question of a pain point that they have that you didn't even know about. So that allows you to maybe even create a follow-up webinar related to the question that they have or the topic that that question is about. Hey, if you're getting some value so far, make sure you smash that like button. Please take 1 second and smash that like button. Let the YouTube algorithm know that you're here and you're loving it. Let's get back to the video. Now, step number 4 is to market your webinar. You have to get the word out somehow. And so some of the ways that you can get the word out is, number 1, Eventbrite. People are going to Eventbrite for different events, including webinars. And so you can post your webinar Eventbrite for free. Now, the key to marketing webinars, you want to do it far in advance. Okay, you can't do it the week before. You want to do it about the month before and start marketing it every single week until the webinar. Now, you don't want to wait too long, because if you wait too long, people are going to forget. And if you wait too soon, you're not going to be able to get the word out enough before the webinar starts. And so the sweet spot, what I found, to do it 1 month before and start marketing it every week leading up to the webinar. Now, another way is through cold email. So you can send out a high number of cold emails to your potential clients and potential customers who might be interested in the webinar. And so a tool that I use for my cold outreach is something called Apollo.io. I'm going to put the link in the description or somewhere down here. But essentially what it does is a database of leads. They have millions upon millions of leads that they have found their contact information, their email for. They even, some leads, they even have their phone numbers. But in this case, what you can do is you can compile the leads. You can use their filters and say, hey, I want to target people within this industry, being able to target them by location. You can target them by how much revenue they're doing, how many employees they have. They have really specific targeting that you can do to get those leads. And then you can input it into an email automation system to send out those emails to invite those people to your webinar. So that's another way that you can get the word out. Facebook events. Facebook events are still hot. What you can do is you can go on Facebook, create a Facebook event, input the landing page in there, and start inviting some of your friends to attend the webinar. And then a bonus tip that I promise you, I'm going to be sharing that at the very end. Make sure you watch the rest of the video, or you can skip to it now if you're super juiced about it. Now, step number 5 is to practice. Okay, and practice if you need to only. Now, some people don't need to practice. They can just go, and that's totally fine. And I found that it's a very rare breed. For everybody like us, we might need to practice a few times. Some people need to completely memorize the webinar because that's just how they feel. All good. Some people rather have an outline, and so that's great too. What I found is the outline method works really well. So it's basically making sure you have bullet points of keywords that are going to let you know what you're going to say next. And so I found that to be very useful for a lot of people. And it's something where you can actually practice. Okay, so for people who need everything completely scripted, if you practice the outline method and you do it after a long period of time, eventually you're going to get used to the outline method, right? And so it's totally cool if you need to start off with scripting, but try to get to the outline method because it's far more conversational. It's not like everything has to be said a certain way. Sometimes ideas come out of nowhere, and it's good to adapt and be able to tailor the conversation to your audience. Now, when you practice everywhere. Okay, so practice in front of a mirror, practice with another person, practice in front of a web camera. Okay, because chances are you're going to be doing it through a webcam. So practice through a webcam. The more you practice, the better you're going to get good at being able to do webinars. All right, time for the bonus tip that I promised you. So the bonus tip is using LinkedIn events to get more exposure to your webinar. And so LinkedIn events is something that's actually still relatively new. A lot of people do not know how to use LinkedIn events. So I'm going to show you how to do it. So first thing you do is LinkedIn. On the left-hand side, you scroll down, you're going to see events, and you click on the plus button. After you click on the plus button, what's going to do is going to tell you what information to input into the event. So the title, the picture of the event, it's going to tell you if there's any links that you want to put there, the description, things like that. Make sure you fill out all the fields. And then after you create the event, you can actually invite up to 1,000 people per week. Yes, 1,000 people. That's why LinkedIn events is so powerful. Facebook only allows you to, I think, input a certain amount. The last time I checked was 50 or 100. Fact check me on that. But on LinkedIn events, you can do 1,000 per week. Pro tip, when you're inviting, you don't have to click all the way down to 1,000. What you can do is to go to the filter section and type in a location, so the United States or a specific country, and now that's going to allow you to select all. But the problem with the select all is you still have to scroll down. So you scroll all the way down. Once you feel like you're maybe close to 1,000, click on check select all, and it's going to tell you how much. If it's not 1,000, then you can unselect it and keep scrolling and keep doing that until you hit 1,000. Now, after you invite your connections, the last thing to do is to make sure you remind people, because a lot of people, they just click that they're attending the event, but they never actually register. And so in my experience, probably about maybe less than 5% actually register. And so you're going to have to remind everybody who marked that they're attending the event, and it's going to show you on the event itself. You can click on who's going and DM each one and let them know that there's a link to register and give them that link. So those are the 5 steps of creating the webinar. Now, some final thoughts that are really important. Creating the webinar and doing the webinar is about 60% of the way. The other 40% is post-production. So what do I mean by that? It's the editing. It's making sure you chop up that webinar into 10 to 15 different social media clips that you can post, because that's going to be where the real exposure is going to come in. Whenever you do a webinar, you might get 10, 20, 30, 50 people attending, 100 people attending. If you're Tony Robbins, hundreds and thousands of people attending. But if you're just starting out, you're going to get a low amount of people attending. So you want to make sure you get exposure after you create the webinar and posting out on social media. So what that does is you're going to build a strong tribe of people that's going to follow you, because they know you're the type of person that's going to be putting out future webinars and to get that access to information. Now, another thought is don't get discouraged. Like I mentioned, you're not going to have a lot of people attending your webinar when you first start. Okay, so when I first started, I got maybe 5, 10 people attend my webinar. But even if you have one, all good, because guess what? You can still reach thousands of people afterwards if you do the post-production. So understand that the first one, you're not going to get a lot of people. The second one, still not a lot of people. You got to be doing it consistently until you start to get results. Final thought, and this is the last one, is to do more webinars and do it more frequently. And so if you do, let's say, 1 webinar a year, you're probably going to lose to someone who's doing 1 webinar a month, because that person has a lot more practice, they're reaching more people, they're building that skill and that craft. And so I recommend to do at least 1 per month. Now, if you want to get really, really accelerated, you can do 1 per 3 weeks or 1 every other week later on. But start out with 1 per month and build the discipline, build the habit to get better at it. And once you get better at it, and once you feel like you can handle once per month, then you can ramp it up. But the more you do, the better. Just like working out, the more reps you put in, the better. So I hope you got a lot of value out of this. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.